The snow was turning red beneath her bare feet when she fell for the last time. December 17th, 1887, Montana Territory. Winona Blackwood had stopped feeling the cold an hour ago. That was the body's way of surrendering, of saying goodbye before the mind caught up. Somewhere behind her, the lights of Missoula flickered like false promises. They had called her witch, poisoner. They had stripped her shoes and thrown her into the blizzard because a rich widow needed someone to blame. She closed her eyes and waited for death. But death didn't come. Elijah Mercer did. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to my channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Now let me tell you how three broken souls found each other in the coldest winter Montana had ever seen. The mob packed Sullivan's saloon shoulder to shoulder on the night everything changed. Winona Blackwood knelt on the sawdust floor. Rope bit into her wrists. Blood dripped slow from where the hemp had torn skin. She made no sound. 40 souls surrounded her. Miners black with coal dust. Ranchers with faces cracked by wind. Women in faded calico, clutching rosary beads like weapons. And at the front, perched on a chair like a throne, Constance Pemberton pressed a silk handkerchief to eyes that held no tears. "She killed my husband." The words dropped into silence. Dr. Pemberton was a good man, a Christian man, and this savage poisoned him in his own bed. The crowd growled agreement. Winona lifted her chin. "I did not." Sheriff Doyle stepped forward. His hand found his pistol. "You speak when spoken to, girl." "I am not a girl. I am 28 years old. I have a name, and I did not poison anyone." "Then explain his death." Constance rose from her chair. Diamond earrings caught the lamplight. Strange jewelry for a widow claiming her husband left only debts. "You prepared his meals. You had keys to his medicine cabinet. You were alone with him the night he died." "He had a weak heart. I warned him for months. He refused to rest." Lies. Constance's fingers stabbed the air. She used Indian witchcraft. Everyone knows what her kind are capable of. A bottle flew from the crowd. Glass shattered against the wall behind Winona's head. Whiskey and shards rained down. She did not flinch. In the back corner near the door where cold crept through the cracks, Elijah Mercer stood in shadow. He had ridden 5 miles for supplies. Flour, salt, medicine for sick cattle. The noise from Sullivan's had pulled him in. Curiosity. Nothing more. He watched the woman on her knees. Watched how her spine stayed straight despite the ropes. Watched how her eyes held steady when everyone else would have begged. He knew that look. Had seen it in field hospitals during the war. On faces of men who understood they were dying, but refused to let their enemies see them break. "What proof do you have?" His own voice surprised him. The crowd turned. Constance's painted smile flickered. "Who said that?" Elijah stepped forward. Bodies parted around him. Not respect. Something else. The way people moved from a man who looked like he had stopped caring what happened to him a long time ago. "I did." "What proof?" Sheriff Doyle's hand tightened on his gun. "This ain't your concern, Mercer. Go on back to that failing ranch of yours." "Simple question. What proof that this woman killed anyone?" Constance's chin lifted. "My husband is dead. She was his housekeeper. She's a half-breed Indian with access to God knows what heathen poisons. That's proof enough for decent Christian folk." "That's not proof. That's prejudice." Silence crashed through the saloon. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Elijah looked at Winona. Her dark eyes found his. Something passed between them. Not recognition. Something older. The understanding shared by people who had been judged and found wanting by those who knew nothing about them. "You're defending her." Constance's voice pitched high with disbelief. "You? The man who couldn't save his own wife. The hermit who talks to ghosts." The words hit like fists. Elijah's jaw locked. His hands curled at his sides. My wife has nothing to do with this. Doesn't she? Maybe you've been alone so long you've forgotten what decent women look like? Maybe you see something familiar in this witch, something broken recognizing broken. Laughter rippled through the crowd, nervous, sharp-edged. Elijah took another step. Doyle's hand moved toward his gun. Don't. Elijah's voice dropped low. You won't clear leather before I put you down. Doyle's hand stopped. Now. Elijah scanned the room. Anybody here actually see this woman poison Dr. Pemberton? Anybody got evidence that ain't just a rich widow's word? Silence answered. That's what I thought. Constance's composure cracked. For one heartbeat, something ugly showed through, something calculating and cold as the winter outside. The proof, she hissed, is that respectable people believe me, and no one believes her. That's how justice works in this territory. If you don't like it, perhaps you should question whose side you're really on. I'm on the side of truth. Truth? Constance laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Truth is whatever people with power decide it is. And you, Mr. Mercer, have no power at all. Your ranch is failing. Your wife is dead. Your name means nothing. You're just a broken man playing at righteousness. Elijah said nothing. Because she was right. About all of it. Winona spoke then. Her voice carried clear across the saloon. He died in his sleep. Every head turned. I found him in the morning. He looked peaceful. His hand was on his chest. He had complained of pain there for weeks. I told him to see another doctor. He was too proud. Shut your mouth, Constance snarled. He was kind to me. He taught me about medicine, Western medicine. He said knowledge should not be hoarded. He said I had a gift. Winona's eyes locked onto Constance. I would never have hurt him. Lies, all lies. Am I lying, or are you Mrs. Pemberton? Winona's voice stayed steady as stone. Your husband told me about the gambling debts, about the creditors, about how the life insurance would solve everything if only he died before they came collecting. The saloon erupted. Constance lunged forward. Two men grabbed her arms. She screamed words that dissolved into animal sounds. The crowd surged and swayed. In the chaos, Elijah caught Winona's eye. She gave him the smallest nod. Sheriff Doyle fired his pistol into the ceiling. Plaster rained like dirty snow. Enough! The noise died to murmurs. Doyle wiped sweat from his forehead. He looked at Constance, still restrained and panting. He looked at Winona, still kneeling, still unbroken. He looked at the crowd that wanted blood, but wasn't quite ready to spill it themselves. We ain't got evidence for a proper trial. Ain't got a judge willing to ride out in this weather. He pointed at Winona. Here's what happens. You're banished. You leave Missoula tonight. Don't come back. If anyone sees you in this town after sunrise, you'll be arrested and held for hanging. That's a death sentence. Elijah's voice cut through. Temperature's 20 below. She won't survive an hour. Then that's between her and God. At least give her shoes, a coat. She gets what she came with, nothing more. Doyle nodded to his deputies. Cut her loose. Escort her to the edge of town. Make sure she heads toward the mountains. The deputies hauled Winona to her feet. When the ropes fell away, her hands hung limp. Blood painted her fingers red. They pushed her toward the door. She passed close to Elijah. Close enough that he smelled sage and copper. Close enough to see the bruises blooming on her cheekbones. Why did you speak for me? She asked quietly. He had no answer. They shoved her out into the howling dark. The door slammed behind her like a coffin lid. Elijah stood motionless in the suddenly festive saloon. Someone called for whiskey. Constance Pemberton accepted condolences with the gracious air of a woman who had gotten exactly what she wanted. Her diamond earrings sparkled with each turn of her head. He walked out without a word. The cold hit like a wall of knives. His breath froze instantly. Stars glittered overhead hard and bright, the kind that only appeared when temperatures dropped past anything that should sustain life. He could see footprints in fresh snow, bare feet. heading north toward the mountains, toward his land, toward empty wilderness where nothing lived because nothing could survive. His horse waited at the hitching post, stamping, eager for a warm barn. Left led home, to the fire he had banked before leaving, to the boy who was probably asleep, to the safety of walls and routine and the slow, comfortable process of giving up. Right led into the storm, into someone else's tragedy, into trouble he did not need and could not afford. Martha's voice came to him then, the way it sometimes did when he stood at crossroads. "What kind of man are you, Eli?" He had asked himself that question every day for 6 years. Still didn't know the answer, but he knew what kind of man he refused to become. He mounted up and turned right. The cold was a living thing with teeth. It crawled inside Winona's thin dress and curled against her bones. It slithered up from frozen ground through bare feet, climbing her legs, reaching for her heart. She had stopped shivering 20 minutes ago. That was bad. Shivering meant the body still fought. When shivering stopped, it meant the body had surrendered. She kept walking anyway. One step, another, each smaller than the last. The lights of Missoula had vanished behind the first ridge. The moon hung fat and indifferent overhead. Blue shadows stretched across endless white. She thought about her grandmother, the Salish woman who had found her when she was 15, wandering between worlds, who had taught her the old songs and the healing plants and the stories that connected earth to sky. "You are neither one thing nor another," her grandmother had said. "That is not weakness, that is bridge. Bridges connect what others cannot." Winona had spent 13 years trying to understand those words, trying to find where she belonged. Too Indian for white society, too white for the Salish, always standing at edges, never quite fitting anywhere. Maybe this was where she had always been headed. This snow, this cold, this ending. Her foot caught on something buried. She fell face first into a drift. The cold embraced her like a lover who meant to kill. It would be so easy to stay here. Just close her eyes, stop fighting, let the snow cover her like the burial shroud she would never have. She thought about the missionary orphanage where she had grown up, the pinched faces, the Bible verses wielded like weapons. The other children who had called her names, she still heard in nightmares. She thought about Dr. Pemberton, the first person in the white world who had treated her like a human being, who had given her work and shelter and books, who had seen her gift for healing and nurtured it instead of fearing it, who had died peacefully in his sleep while his wife was already counting the insurance money. She thought about all the times she had been told she did not belong, all the doors slammed in her face, all the opportunities denied because of the color of her skin or the circumstances of her birth. And she thought, no, not like this. Not giving them the satisfaction of finding her frozen corpse come spring. Not letting Constance Pemberton win completely. She pushed herself up onto hands and knees. The world spun. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel. She crawled. One arm forward. One knee forward. Again. Again. The snow burned against her palms. Her dress dragged heavy with ice. Her breath came in ragged gasps that left crystals floating in the air. She crawled until her arms gave out, until she collapsed again into white silence. This time she could not rise. "I'm sorry, grandmother," she whispered. The words frosted and fell. "I tried." She closed her eyes, and then she heard hoofbeats. Elijah found her 1.5 miles from town, half buried in a drift, still as death. He threw himself from the saddle before his horse fully stopped, dropped to his knees beside her, put his fingers against her neck and felt the thready flutter of a pulse that was giving up. "Hey!" He shook her shoulder. "Wake up." Her eyes opened, dark as winter sky. They focused on his face with difficulty. "You." The word came out slurred, her jaw too frozen to form sounds right. "Me. Can you stand? She tried. Her legs buckled. Different plan. He lifted her. She weighed nothing. The cold had turned her into something made of ice and bone, all the warmth leached away. He got her onto his horse, mounting behind her, wrapping his coat around them both. "Stay awake," he said against her ear. "You sleep, you die." "Maybe," her voice drifted. "Maybe dying is easier." "Easier for who you want that woman to win. Want her drinking champagne over your grave." Something flickered in Winona's eyes. Not quite fire. The memory of fire. "No." "Then stay awake. Talk to me." "About what?" "Anything. Tell me why you became a housekeeper." She was quiet so long he thought she had slipped away. Then, Dr. Pemberton found me treating a miner's infected wound, outside the company store. Everyone else had walked past. He stopped, watched, asked where I learned to clean a wound like that. "Where did you—" "My grandmother, Salish medicine, and books. I taught myself to read when I was 9, stole books from the missionary school library." A ghost of something crossed her face. "They beat me when they caught me, said Indians weren't meant for learning." "But you kept reading." "I kept reading." Elijah kicked his horse into faster movement. The animal protested but obeyed. Good horse. Better than he deserved. "Dr. Pemberton hired me that same day," Winona continued. Her voice was stronger now, the talking keeping her anchored. "Said he needed someone who could assist with patients, someone who wasn't afraid of blood." "Were you afraid of blood?" "I've seen too much of it to be afraid." She paused. "He taught me everything. Anatomy, pharmacology, surgical techniques. Said I had steadier hands than most doctors he knew." "Why didn't you become a doctor yourself?" "You know why." He did. No medical school in the country would admit a woman. Certainly not a half-Indian woman with no family and no money. "His wife hated me from the first day," Winona said. "Constance. She saw how he looked at me when I got a diagnosis right. When I saved a patient he had given up on. It wasn't romantic, it was respect, but she couldn't tell the difference. So she waited. She waited. And when his heart finally gave out, she saw her chance." Winona's laugh held no humor. "She gets the insurance money, gets rid of the Indian, and gets sympathy from the whole town. Perfect crime." "Except you're not dead yet." "Except I'm not dead yet." They rode in silence for a while. The storm was building. Wind cut through gaps in Elijah's coat. Snow began to fall harder. "Why did you come after me?" Winona asked. "I don't know." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." "Your wife. The woman mentioned her. What happened?" Elijah's arms tightened around her. For a long moment only the wind spoke. "She died," he finally said. 6 years ago. Childbirth. The baby too. I'm sorry. I was a doctor, army surgeon, saved hundreds of men during the war. Couldn't save my own wife and child. That wasn't your fault. I should have taken her east, to a real hospital, better doctors. But she wanted to stay, said this was our home, said she trusted me." His voice cracked on the last word. "She shouldn't have." Winona turned her head slightly. Even frozen and half dead, her eyes saw too much. "So you stopped being a doctor?" "I stopped everything. Came out here to disappear. Been doing a fine job of it until tonight." "And the boy?" "The one you mentioned to the sheriff. Tommy. Found him 3 weeks ago trying to steal my chickens. Half-starved. Frozen worse than you. His parents died in the mining camps." "You took him in?" "He refused to leave." "That's not the same thing." No, it wasn't. The ranch house appeared through the swirling snow. A dark shape against darker sky. But smoke rose from the chimney. Warm light glowed behind frost-covered windows. Tommy had kept the fire going. Elijah dismounted and lifted Winona down. She could stand now, barely her hands gripping his arms for balance. The door banged open. Tommy stood silhouetted against the firelight. 11 years old and skinny as a fence post, red hair wild from sleep, eyes huge in his pale face. "Mr. Mercer, what happened?" "Who's that? Is she dead?" "She's not dead. Move." Tommy scrambled aside. Elijah half-carried Winona to the chair nearest the fireplace. "Blankets. All of them. Now." Tommy ran. Winona's eyes moved around the cabin, taking in the spare furniture, the medical bag gathering dust in the corner, the photograph on the mantel of a young woman with gentle eyes. "Your wife," she said. "Yes." "She was beautiful." "Yes." Tommy returned with an armload of quilts. Together they wrapped Winona until only her face showed. "Mr. Mercer." Tommy's voice dropped to a whisper. "Look at her feet." Elijah looked. The skin had gone white and waxy. Frostbite, deep. Not black yet, which meant there was still a chance. "Heat water," he ordered. "Not hot. Warm. Lukewarm. Understand?" "Yes, sir." Tommy ran for the pump. Elijah knelt before Winona. His hands, which had not touched a patient in 6 years, remembered their training. "This is going to hurt," he said. "I know. The frostbite is severe. We need to warm your feet slowly. Too fast causes more damage. I'll need to—" "I know the procedure." Her eyes met his. "Dr. Pemberton taught me. Gradual warming. Monitor for compartment syndrome. Watch for infection as tissue dies." Elijah stared at her. "You really were his student." "I really was." Tommy returned with a basin of water. Elijah tested the temperature, nodded. "Ready." Winona gripped the arms of the chair. "Do it." He lowered her feet into the water. She screamed. The sound tore through the cabin like something dying. Her body arched. Her hands clawed at the wood. Every muscle locked rigid with agony as blood forced its way back into frozen tissue. "Hold her!" Elijah barked at Tommy. The boy grabbed Winona's shoulders. His face had gone white, but his grip stayed firm. "It's all right," Elijah said. The voice came from somewhere old. Somewhere he had buried with Martha. The calm, steady tone he had used on soldiers in field hospitals as he sawed off their legs. "The pain means it's working. Blood is flowing again. You're going to keep your feet. Both of them. Just breathe. Breathe through it." Winona's screams subsided to whimpers. The whimpers faded to ragged gasps. Tears streamed down her face, the first she had shed all night. "Good," Elijah said. "That's good. The worst is over." Liar. But something like a smile flickered across her face. "It's going to hurt for days." "Yes, it is." He lifted her feet from the water. The skin had gone from white to angry red. Color meant circulation. Color meant life. "You'll keep your toes," he said. "Probably. We'll know more by morning." Winona looked at him, really looked, past the grief and the guilt and the walls he had built so high. "You're still a doctor," she said. "You never stopped." "I stopped." "Your hands didn't." He had no answer for that. Tommy brought more blankets, hot tea with honey that Elijah had been saving for emergencies. Slowly, carefully, they brought Winona back from the edge of death. Outside the storm raged. Wind screamed against the walls. Snow piled against the windows until the glass disappeared behind white. Inside the fire crackled, and 3 people breathed the same air. "I should go," Winona said finally. Her voice was stronger now. "When the storm breaks, I've brought you enough trouble." "Go where?" "I don't know. West. California, maybe. Somewhere no one knows my name." "You won't make it to California. Not in winter. Not without money or supplies." "Then I'll die trying. At least it will be my choice." There's another option. Winona looked at him. Stay here, Elijah said. Work for your keep. I need help with the ranch. The cattle are sick and I can't figure out why. The barn needs repairs. I can't do alone. Tommy needs... He glanced at the boy who was watching them with wide eyes. Tommy needs someone who isn't me. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a chance. Roof over your head, food in your belly. Time to figure out your next move. And when the town finds out, when Constance Pemberton discovers you're harboring the woman she tried to kill, then we'll deal with that together. The word hung in the air. Together. Such a small word for such a large promise. Winona studied his face for a long moment, reading him the way she had learned to read patience, looking for the lie, the angle, the hidden motive. She found none. Why? She asked. Why risk everything for a stranger? Elijah looked at Martha's photograph on the mantel, at the smile that had promised forever, at the eyes he still saw in his dreams. Because 6 years ago I let someone down. I wasn't there when she needed me. I've been running from that ever since. He turned back to Winona. Maybe it's time I stopped running. Tommy stepped forward. His small hand found Elijah's. I think she should stay, the boy said. It's too quiet around here, and you need someone to yell at besides me. Something cracked in Winona's expression, the first break in the armor she had worn since the saloon floor. You don't know me, she said. Either of you. I could be everything they say. A witch, a poisoner, a savage. Are you? Tommy asked. No. Then what does it matter what they say? Simple words, simple truth, the kind only a child could speak. Winona closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. All right, she said. I'll stay until the storm breaks, until I can travel. Fair enough. Elijah stood, his knees cracked, 42 years old and feeling every one of them. There's a cot in the storage room. It's not much, but it's warm. Tommy, show her where. The boy helped Winona to her feet. She could walk now, limping heavily, but moving under her own power. At the door to the storage room, she paused. Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Elijah, if you're going to live under my roof, you might as well use my name. Elijah. She tested the word. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Ranch work is hard. You might wish I had left you in that snowdrift. No. Her voice was quiet, but certain. I won't wish that. She disappeared into the back room. Tommy followed to make sure she had enough blankets. Elijah stood alone in the main room, listening to the storm howl outside. On the mantel, Martha's photograph watched him with knowing eyes. What kind of man are you, Eli? I don't know, he said to the empty room. But I'm trying to find out. He added wood to the fire, checked the locks on the doors, did all the small routines that kept the darkness at bay. When he finally settled into his chair, exhaustion hit like a physical weight, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept turning over the night's events. The saloon, the mob, the woman who faced death without flinching, the feel of her body against his during the long ride home, the sound of her screams as circulation returned. The look in her eyes when she said she would stay. What had he done? He had made enemies of the most powerful family in Missoula. He had taken in a woman accused of witchcraft and murder. He had given a stranger a place in his home when he could barely keep himself and Tommy alive. Stupid, reckless, the kind of decision that got men killed in this territory. But when he closed his eyes, he didn't see disaster. He saw Winona's face in the firelight, the strength in her despite everything, the intelligence that shone through even half-frozen and beaten. He saw someone worth saving, and for the first time in 6 years, he saw something that might be worth fighting for. The storm raged for 3 more days. During that time, Winona Blackwood learned the rhythms of Stone Creek Ranch. She learned that Elijah rose before dawn and didn't stop working until after dark. That he spoke in short sentences and long silences. That he kept his wife's photograph dusted and her garden tools oiled, though the garden had been dead for years. She learned that Tommy talked enough for 3 people. That he lied about small things out of habit and big things out of fear. That he slept with a knife under his pillow and flinched at loud noises. She learned that the cattle were sick with something neither man could identify. That the barn roof leaked in 6 places. That the ranch was 3 months behind on its loan payments to the First Montana Bank. And she learned slowly that she might have found something she had never expected, a place where she was needed. On the 3rd morning, the storm finally broke. Sunlight poured through the windows like liquid gold. The world outside was transformed, buried under 3 feet of pristine white. Winona stood at the window, watching Tommy attempt to feed the chickens. The birds had survived the storm in the small coop attached to the barn, but they were not happy about their confinement. "He's doing it wrong." Elijah appeared beside her. He moved quietly for such a large man. "He's throwing the feed in clumps. The dominant hens will eat everything. The others will starve. He'll learn. Or the chickens will die. Then he'll learn faster." Winona looked at him. "That's your teaching philosophy. Let them fail. It's the only way lessons stick. That's a hard way to live. It's a hard world." She couldn't argue with that. They watched Tommy in silence for a while. The boy was talking to the chickens now, carrying on a full conversation as if they might answer back. "He's lonely," Winona said. "He has me." "You're not enough." Elijah's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "The cattle," Winona said, changing the subject. "Can I see them? Your feet are fine, sore but functional. I need to move, and you need to know what's killing your herd." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Boots by the door. They were Martha's. Should fit you close enough." Winona found the boots. They were good quality, barely worn sized for a woman with slightly smaller feet than hers. She laced them tight and followed Elijah out into the blinding white world. The cold hit her lungs like knives. But it was a clean cold now. Bright. The kind that woke you up instead of killing you. The barn stood 50 yards from the house. It had once been painted red, she could tell, but years of weather had stripped it to gray. The roof sagged in the middle. The doors hung crooked on their hinges. Inside, 6 cattle stood in their stalls. They were thin, too thin. Their coats dull instead of glossy. Several had mucus crusting around their nostrils. Winona moved closer. One of the cows turned to look at her with clouded eyes. "How long have they been like this?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. I've tried everything. Changed their feed, cleaned the water trough. Nothing helps." Winona examined the nearest animal, felt its lymph nodes, checked its gums, listened to its breathing. "It's not their feed," she said. "Then what? Show me where they graze." Elijah led her behind the barn to the winter pasture. It was small, maybe 2 acres fenced in with split rails. The snow had covered everything, but she could see the shapes beneath. Dead grass, scattered bushes. One bush in particular caught her attention. She waded through the snow until she reached it. Brushed away the white powder to reveal dark green leaves and clusters of red berries. "Water hemlock," she said. Elijah went pale. "That's not possible. I cleared that pasture myself, every spring." "This is new growth, from the roots. They spread underground." She straightened. "Your cattle have been eating it, small amounts probably. Not enough to kill them quickly, but enough to make them sick." "Can you cure them?" "Maybe, if we act fast. But first we need to dig out every trace of this plant, roots and all. Or they'll just keep getting poisoned." Elijah stared at the hemlock like it was a snake about to strike. "I should have seen it. You're not a botanist, and you've had other things on your mind." "I should have seen it," he repeated. His voice carried a weight she recognized, the weight of a man who held himself responsible for everything. "Help me dig," she said gently. "We'll clear it together." They worked for hours. Tommy joined them once he finished with the chickens. The three of them dug through frozen ground, pulling up every trace of the deadly plant, burning the roots to make sure nothing grew back. By afternoon, they had cleared the entire pasture. By evening, Winona had prepared a remedy for the cattle, activated charcoal to absorb remaining toxins, milk thistle to support their livers, molasses to make it palatable. "Where did you learn this?" Tommy asked, watching her mix the concoction. "My grandmother. The Salish have been healing animals for thousands of years." "Do they have schools for medicine?" "Not like white schools. They have teachers, elders who pass down knowledge to those who are ready to receive it." "Could I learn, I mean?" Tommy shuffled his feet. "Not the Indian stuff, but the regular healing. Mr. Mercer was a doctor. He could teach me." Winona glanced at Elijah, who stood in the barn doorway with an unreadable expression. "Ask him," she said. Tommy turned to face the man who had taken him in. "Mr. Mercer, would you teach me, I mean, how to help animals and people, how to fix things that are broken?" The silence stretched long enough that Winona thought he would refuse. The pain in his eyes was visible even in the dim barn light. This was a door he had closed 6 years ago. A room he had locked and thrown away the key. Then Elijah let out a breath that seemed to come from somewhere very deep. "All right," he said. "We'll start tomorrow. But you do exactly what I say when I say it. Medicine isn't a game. People die when you make mistakes." Tommy's face split into the widest smile Winona had seen. "Yes, sir, I won't let you down. I promise." He ran off to share the news with the chickens, because apparently the chickens needed to know everything. Elijah watched him go. "He reminds me of someone," he said quietly. "Who? Me. At his age, before the war, before everything." He shook his head. "I was going to change the world. Save everyone. Turns out the world doesn't want to be saved." "Maybe not the world," Winona said, "but sometimes one person is enough." Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not romance. Not yet. Something simpler. The recognition of two people who had lost everything and were slowly, painfully learning to hope again. "The cattle should start improving in a few days," Winona said, breaking the moment. "We'll need to monitor them closely." "I know." "And the barn roof needs fixing before the next storm." "I know that too." "And the loan payment to the bank." "Miss Blackwood." Elijah held up a hand. "I've been managing this ranch alone for 6 years. I think I know what it needs." "Do you?" "Because from what I can see, it's falling apart. And you've been here 3 days. That makes you an expert. It makes me someone with fresh eyes. Sometimes that's worth more than years of experience." Elijah's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he would order her off his property, back into the snow, back to the death that waited for her. Then slowly, his shoulders relaxed. "You're not wrong," he admitted. "I've been existing, not living, going through the motions because I didn't know what else to do." "I understand." "Do you?" "I've spent my whole life existing, surviving, waiting for permission to actually live." She looked out at the snow-covered land. "Maybe it's time we both stopped waiting." The sun was setting. Orange and pink painted the sky. The world looked like something from a painting, beautiful and untouchable. "There's a man," Elijah said slowly, "in Missoula, Harrison Caldwell. He owns the bank. He's been trying to buy this land for 2 years." Winona turned to look at him. "He's offered fair prices, more than fair. I could sell tomorrow and walk away with enough money to start over somewhere else." "But you haven't." "No." "Why?" Elijah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because this is where Martha is buried. This is where we were going to raise our children. This is the last place where she was alive and happy." He swallowed hard. "If I leave, I lose her. The last piece of her I have left." "You won't lose her." Winona's voice was gentle. "She's not in the land. She's in you. In your memories. In the man she helped you become. You didn't know her." No. But I know grief. And I know that holding on to places won't bring back the people we've lost. It just keeps us trapped with their ghosts. The words hung in the cold air. Elijah said nothing, but something shifted in his face. A wall cracking, a door opening just a sliver. Tommy's voice echoed from the house. "Mr. Mercer, Miss Winona supper's ready. I made beans." The moment shattered like thin ice. "We should go in," Elijah said. "Yes." But neither of them moved, not right away. They stood in the dying light, two damaged souls balanced on the edge of something neither of them fully understood. Finally, Elijah offered his hand. "Welcome to Stone Creek Ranch, Miss Blackwood." Winona took it. His grip was warm and strong and certain. "Thank you, Mr. Mercer." "Elijah." "Elijah!" She smiled just slightly. "You can call me Winona, if we're going to be neighbors." Neighbors live in separate houses. Figure of speech. Bad figure of speech. I'll work on it. They walked toward the house together. Behind them, the sun finished setting. The first stars appeared. The wind picked up, carrying the promise of more snow. In Missoula, 30 miles south, Harrison Caldwell sat in his office above the bank. A map spread across his desk showed the railroad route that would make him rich. And right in the middle of that route, marked with a red X, sat Stone Creek Ranch. He had heard about the commotion at Sullivan's saloon, about the crazy rancher who had defied Constance Pemberton, about the Indian woman who had somehow survived the night. Caldwell smiled. He had been patient for 2 years. He could be patient a little longer. Elijah Mercer was already drowning in debt. Add a scandal, an accusation of harboring criminals, maybe a few anonymous complaints to the territorial marshal. The ranch would be his by spring, one way or another. He folded the map carefully and locked it in his desk. Then he put on his coat and hat and went home to his wife, who was waiting with dinner and questions about his day that he would answer with careful lies. The game was just beginning, and Harrison Caldwell never lost. In the small cabin at Stone Creek Ranch, 3 people gathered around a table scarred by years of use. Tommy's beans were terrible, overcooked and underseasoned, and somehow both too watery and too thick. Elijah ate them without complaint. Winona ate them without complaint. Tommy ate them with obvious pride. "Tomorrow," Winona said, "I'll teach you how to cook properly." "What's wrong with my cooking?" "Everything." Tommy looked wounded. Then he grinned. "Fair enough. What else are you going to teach me?" "Medicine, plants, how to read tracks in snow, how to start a fire in wet weather, how to survive when everything is trying to kill you." "Everything is always trying to kill us out here." "Then you'll have plenty of opportunities to practice." Outside, the wind howled. Snow began to fall again. The fire crackled and popped, throwing shadows on the walls. 3 broken people, 3 abandoned souls, brought together by chance and cruelty and the stubborn refusal to give up. None of them knew what tomorrow would bring. None of them knew that forces were already moving against them, that enemies were making plans, that the quiet life they were building was about to be torn apart. But tonight, there was warmth. There was food. There was something that felt almost like family. And in Montana Territory, in the winter of 1887, that was more than most people had. The snow kept falling. The fire kept burning. And somewhere deep beneath the frozen ground, hidden from sight, the seeds of something were beginning to stir. Something that might, if given enough time and care, grow into hope. The snow melted slowly over the next 2 weeks. Winona found her rhythm at Stone Creek Ranch the way water finds its course through stone. Not forcing, not fighting, just moving where movement was possible. She rose before Elijah, which surprised him. By the time he stumbled into the kitchen with sleep still clouding his eyes, she had already fed the chickens, checked on the cattle, and started coffee boiling on the stove. "You don't have to do all that," he said on the fourth morning. I know. This isn't a test. You don't have to prove anything. I'm not proving anything. I'm earning my keep. He studied her across the kitchen. She had borrowed one of Martha's old dresses, blue cotton faded nearly to white. It hung loose on her frame, but she had belted it with rope and rolled the sleeves. Practical, no vanity in it. The cattle are improving, he said finally. I know. I checked them an hour ago. You checked them in the dark. I can see in the dark. Another gift from my grandmother. He couldn't tell if she was joking. Her face gave nothing away. Tommy stumbled out of his room, red hair pointing in 6 directions, still half asleep. He collapsed into a chair and reached for the coffee pot. No coffee for you, Winona said, moving it out of reach. You're 11. I'm almost 12. Almost 12-year-olds don't need coffee. They need milk. We don't have milk. Then water. Tommy groaned but didn't argue. Somewhere in the past 2 weeks, he had stopped questioning Winona's authority in the kitchen. She had earned it the same way she earned everything else, through competence and consistency. Lessons today, Elijah said, after morning chores. Tommy's face brightened. Medicine lessons. Basic anatomy. You need to understand how bodies work before you can fix them. Will there be blood? Not today. That's disappointing. Winona hid a smile behind her coffee cup. The boy had a morbid streak she found oddly endearing. Like a crow fascinated by shiny things, Tommy was fascinated by the mechanics of life and death. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence. Eggs from the chickens that had survived. Salt pork from the storehouse. Bread that Winona had baked yesterday, still warm from being set near the fire. It was the closest thing to family any of them had felt in years. They didn't talk about it. Talking about it might break the spell. After breakfast, they separated to their tasks. Elijah to the barn, to continue repairs on the roof. Tommy to gather firewood from the pile behind the house. Winona to the cattle mixing another batch of her remedy. She was elbow-deep in molasses and charcoal when she heard hoofbeats on the road. Her hands went still. Her body tensed. In the 2 weeks since the storm, no one had come to Stone Creek Ranch. The isolation had felt like protection. Now it felt like vulnerability. She wiped her hands on her apron and moved to the barn door. Stayed in shadow. Watched. 2 riders approached from the south. From the direction of Missoula. One was Sheriff Doyle. She recognized his slouching posture and the way he sat his horse like a sack of grain. The other was a man she didn't recognize. Tall, well-dressed, expensive coat and polished boots that had no business in ranch country. He sat his horse with the rigid posture of someone who had learned to ride from books rather than experience. "Elijah," she called softly. He appeared beside her within seconds. His rifle was already in his hands. She hadn't seen him grab it. "Doyle," he said. "And Caldwell." "The banker." "The banker." They watched the riders approach. Elijah's jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the rifle stock. "Go inside," he said. "No." "Winona." "I'm not hiding, not anymore. Whatever they want, I face it standing up." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Stay behind me. Don't speak unless I tell you to. I'm not good at taking orders." I noticed. The riders reached the yard and reined in their horses. Sheriff Doyle's eyes found Winona immediately. Something ugly flickered in his expression before he smoothed it away. "Mercer," he said, "nice morning for a visit." "You're not welcome here, Doyle. Neither is he." Harrison Caldwell smiled. It was the kind of smile that belonged on a snake. Too wide, too knowing. Like he was enjoying a joke no one else understood. "Now that's not very neighborly," Caldwell said. His voice was smooth as oiled leather. "I come all this way to discuss business, and you greet me with a rifle. State your business and leave." "Direct. I like that. A man who doesn't waste words. Caldwell dismounted with careful movements. He was older than Winona had expected. 50 at least, with silver threading through dark hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent calculating profits. "May I approach? I promise not to bite." Elijah didn't lower the rifle. But he didn't shoot either. Caldwell walked forward until he stood 10 feet away. His eyes moved past Elijah to where Winona stood in the barn doorway. "Ah," he said. "The infamous Miss Blackwood. I've heard so much about you." Winona said nothing. "The whole town is talking. The Indian witch who seduced Dr. Pemberton poisoned him in his bed and then bewitched the lonely rancher who tried to help her." Caldwell's smile widened. "Quite a story. Very romantic." "None of that is true," Elijah said flatly. "Truth is such a slippery thing, isn't it? What matters is what people believe. And right now, people believe your guest here is a dangerous criminal who should have died in that blizzard." "Get to the point, Caldwell." "The point." Caldwell reached into his coat. Elijah's rifle came up. Caldwell raised his other hand peacefully. "Just papers, Mr. Mercer. Nothing dangerous." He withdrew a folded document and held it out. "Your loan payment is 3 months overdue. According to the terms of your agreement with the First Montana Bank, that gives us the right to call the full balance due immediately. $800 payable within 30 days, or the bank forecloses on the property." Elijah didn't take the paper. "I've never missed a payment in 6 years." "You missed 3. October, November, December. The notices were sent to your postal box in town. Perhaps you haven't been checking it." "I've been busy." "Yes, I can see that." Caldwell's eyes flicked to Winona again. "Busy with other matters." Winona felt her hands curl into fists. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, to tell this oily man exactly what she thought of him and his manufactured crisis. But she remembered Elijah's words. "Don't speak unless I tell you to." $800, Elijah said slowly. "In 30 days. That's correct. Of course there's another option." Caldwell smiled again. That snake smile. "I've been trying to buy this land for 2 years now. My offer still stands. $3,000. More than fair given the condition of the property." "The property is worth 5 times that." "Perhaps. To the right buyer. But the right buyer would need to get here before the foreclosure goes through. And I've heard the railroad has no interest in this particular stretch of land anymore. Something about the route changing." Winona watched Elijah's face, watched the realization dawn, the trap closing. "You changed the route," Elijah said quietly. "You have people in the railroad company." "I have people everywhere, Mr. Mercer. That's how business works." Caldwell tucked the foreclosure notice into Elijah's coat pocket since he still wouldn't take it. 30 days. I'd advise you to consider my offer seriously. It won't remain on the table forever." He turned and walked back to his horse, mounted with the same careful, practiced movements. "Oh, one more thing." He looked at Winona directly. "Mrs. Pemberton has filed a formal complaint with the territorial marshal. She's claiming you violated the terms of your banishment by remaining within county lines. The marshal is a busy man, but he'll send someone to investigate eventually. Weeks maybe. Months if you're lucky." "She's not in Missoula," Elijah said. "She's on my property. That's not the same county." Interesting legal argument. You could make it to a judge if you had money for lawyers. Which you don't. Caldwell tipped his hat. "Good day, Mr. Mercer, Miss Blackwood. I do hope we can reach an understanding before things become unpleasant." He rode away. Sheriff Doyle followed without ever having spoken a word. His job here was intimidation, not conversation. Elijah stood motionless until they disappeared over the ridge. Then he lowered the rifle and closed his eyes. "I'm sorry," Winona said. "For what?" "For bringing this on you. Caldwell was already after your land, but now he has extra ammunition. The scandal of harboring me. He would have found another weapon, Men like him always do. Still, if I hadn't been here, if you hadn't been here, my cattle would be dead. Tommy would still be eating beans every night, and I would be—" He stopped, swallowed. "I would be waiting to die like everything else on this ranch." Winona felt something shift in her chest, a warmth she hadn't expected. "We have 30 days, she said. "We don't have $800. We don't have $8. Then we find another way." There is no other way. Caldwell owns the bank. He controls the foreclosure process. He has lawyers and connections and more money than God. "And what do we have?" Elijah looked at her. Really looked. For the first time since she had arrived, she saw something in his eyes besides grief and resignation. "Each other," he said quietly. "I suppose we have each other? Then that's where we start." Tommy appeared around the corner of the barn, his arms full of firewood. He took one look at their faces and dropped the entire load. "What happened? Who were those men? Are we in trouble?" "Yes," Winona said. "But we're going to fix it." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I've survived worse than a banker with too much power and too little conscience." She walked past both of them, heading toward the cattle pen. Her mind was already working, sorting through options, calculating odds, looking for the weakness in Caldwell's armor. There was always a weakness, always a crack in the wall. She just had to find it. That night, after Tommy had gone to bed, Winona sat with Elijah at the kitchen table. A single candle burned between them, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Tell me about Caldwell," she said. "Everything you know." Elijah leaned back in his chair. The candlelight deepened the lines on his face, made him look older than his 42 years. "He came to Missoula 8 years ago. Nobody knows where from. Had money already, enough to buy the bank from old Mr. Henderson. Within 2 years, he owned half the businesses in town." "How?" "Same way he's trying to take my land, find people in trouble, offer help with strings attached. Pull the strings when the time is right." "Does he have family?" "A wife, Adelaide. She's sick. Consumption, they say. Doesn't leave the house much." "Children?" "None." Winona filed that information away. A sick wife, no children. A man building an empire with no one to leave it to. "What does he want with your land specifically? There must be thousands of acres for sale in the territory." "The railroad route. It was supposed to come through here, through Bitterroot Valley. My property sits right at the narrowest point. Anyone who controls that land controls access to everything west of it. But he said the route changed." "He lied, or he's going to make it change. Either way, he wants this land because it's valuable, because he can make money from it." Elijah's hands clenched on the table. "He doesn't care about the valley, doesn't care about the people who live here, doesn't care about anything except profit. Men who care about nothing except profit always have blind spots." "Like what?" "Like underestimating the people they're trying to crush." Winona leaned forward. "He thinks we're beaten. He thinks you'll take his offer because you have no choice. That's his weakness." "It's not weakness if it's true. I don't have a choice." "You have a choice. It's just not an easy one." Elijah was quiet for a long moment. The candle flickered. Outside, an owl called into the darkness. "What choice?" he finally asked. "Fight." "With what? I'm a failed rancher with a rundown property and a reputation for taking in accused witches. He's the most powerful man in the territory. David was a shepherd boy. Goliath was a giant. This isn't a Bible story." "No, but the principle is the same. The powerful always underestimate the desperate. They can't imagine what we're willing to do because they've never had to do it." Elijah studied her face in the candlelight. "You've fought battles like this before." "I've been fighting battles like this my whole life, against people who wanted me dead or gone or silent. I'm still here." "And the people who wanted you dead?" "Some of them aren't." Something in her voice made Elijah go still. He saw it then. The steel beneath the surface. The warrior underneath the healer. Who are you, Winona Blackwood? I'm someone who doesn't know how to give up, even when I should. She stood, pushing back from the table. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start planning. Planning what? How to destroy Harrison Caldwell. She walked to her room and closed the door, leaving Elijah alone with the guttering candle and the echo of her words. Destroy Harrison Caldwell. It was impossible. Foolish. The kind of plan that got people killed. But as he sat there in the darkness, something stirred in his chest. Something he had thought dead and buried with Martha. Hope. Or maybe it was just madness. In his experience, the two felt remarkably similar. The next morning, Winona asked Elijah for paper and ink. He found them in Martha's old writing desk, unused for 6 years. The paper had yellowed slightly, but it was still good. The ink had thickened, but was still usable. Winona spread everything on the kitchen table and began to write. What are you doing? Tommy asked, peering over her shoulder. Making a list. Of what? Everything Caldwell has done wrong. Every person he's hurt. Every law he's bent or broken. How do you know he's broken laws? Men like him always break laws. They just hide it well. She continued writing, her handwriting small and precise. The question is whether we can prove it. Tommy watched her work for a while. Then he said, I could help. Find things out, I mean. I'm good at sneaking around. Used to do it all the time in the mining camps. Sneaking around a banker's office is different from sneaking around mining camps. Not that different. Both have things worth stealing. Winona looked up at him. The boy's face was earnest, eager. He wanted to help, wanted to be part of something bigger than himself. It's dangerous, she said. So is everything. Your uncle would never allow it. My uncle doesn't have to know. Tommy. Miss Winona. His voice dropped to a whisper. Mr. Mercer saved my life. He gave me a home when I had nothing. This is my home too now. I'm not going to let some snake in a fancy coat take it away. Winona felt something tighten in her throat. This boy. This fierce, loyal, damaged boy. He was willing to risk everything for a family he had only known for a few months. We'll talk about it later, she said. When I know more about what we need. Tommy nodded, satisfied. He grabbed a piece of bread and disappeared outside to do his chores. Elijah came in a few minutes later, stamping snow off his boots. He saw the paper spread across the table and raised an eyebrow. Research, Winona said before he could ask. What kind? The kind that might save your ranch. He poured himself coffee and sat down across from her. Read through her list without commenting. When he reached the end, he set the paper down carefully. You're planning something. I'm considering options. These options could get us all killed. Doing nothing will definitely lose your land. Taking risks gives us a chance. What kind of chances are we talking about? Winona set down her pen, met his eyes. Caldwell controls the bank, controls the foreclosure process, controls most of the illegal apparatus in Missoula. We can't beat him on his own ground. So we change the ground, find evidence of his crimes, and take it to someone he doesn't control. Who would that be? The territorial marshal, federal judges, newspaper editors in Helena or Butte who would love a story about a corrupt banker preying on honest ranchers. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. You're talking about war, he said finally. I'm talking about survival. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. He stood and walked to the window, stared out at the white expanse of his land, the land his father had claimed, the land where Martha was buried. During the war, he said slowly, I saw men make decisions like this, risk everything on a single desperate gamble. Most of them died. And the ones who didn't, they became heroes or demons, depending on who was telling the story. Which would you rather be? He turned to look at her. His face was shadowed, unreadable. I used to think I knew. Now I'm not so sure. Then let me be sure for both of us. At least until you figure it out. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite trust, but something adjacent to it. What do you need? He asked. Information. About Caldwell's business dealings, who he's foreclosed on, who owes him money, who might be willing to talk. That's a lot of ground to cover. Then we'd better start covering it. The door banged open. Tommy rushed in. His face flushed, his breath coming in gasps. "Riders!" he panted. "Coming up the road. 4 of them." Elijah grabbed his rifle. "Caldwell again." "No, I don't recognize them, but they're armed and they're moving fast." Winona stood, her mind racing. 4 armed riders moving fast, approaching a ranch where a woman accused of witchcraft was hiding. This was not a social call. "Tommy, go to your room. Bar the door. Don't come out until we tell you." "But now." The boy looked like he wanted to argue. Then he saw Winona's face and thought better of it. He ran. Elijah was already at the door, rifle raised. Winona moved to the window, positioning herself where she could see but not be easily seen. The riders came into view. 4 men on dark horses. They wore long coats and low hats. One of them carried a shotgun across his saddle. Not law enforcement, not soldiers, something else. "Bounty hunters," Elijah said quietly. "Has to be. Constance Pemberton. Or Caldwell. Paying someone to do what the law won't do fast enough." The riders reached the yard. Their leader, a man with a scarred face and dead eyes, raised his hand for the others to stop. "Elijah Mercer," he called out. "We're here for the woman. Send her out and we leave peaceful. Make us come and people get hurt." Elijah stepped onto the porch. His rifle stayed level. "Private property. You're trespassing. Don't want trouble, Mercer. Just the woman. She's wanted for murder in Missoula. We're taking her back." "She's not wanted. She was banished. There's a difference." "Not according to the papers we're carrying. Judge issued a warrant this morning. Seems someone filed new evidence." "What evidence?" "Not my job to ask questions. My job is to bring her in." The scarred man's hand moved toward his gun. "Now you can do this easy or hard. Easy, you step aside, we take the woman, everyone goes home alive. Hard." He smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Hard gets messy." Winona made a decision. She walked out onto the porch before Elijah could stop her, stood beside him with her head high and her shoulders back. "I'm here," she said. "What new evidence?" The scarred man looked at her. Something flickered in his dead eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or appreciation. "You're braver than I expected." "Answer the question." "Dr. Pemberton's body was exhumed. New doctor looked at it. Said there was poison in the stomach. Said someone fed him arsenic over several months." Winona felt ice spread through her veins. "That's not possible." "Possible or not, it's what the paper says. And this paper says you're coming with us." "She's not going anywhere." Elijah's voice was steel. "Mister, you don't want this fight. 4 against 1. Maybe you get one of us, maybe 2. But you won't get all 4. And then what happens to your boy in there, the one hiding in the back room?" Elijah's face went white. "Yeah, we know about him. Kid like that alone in the world, no family. It's a hard life for orphans out here. Accidents happen all the time." Winona felt something dark rise in her chest. An anger older than language. "Touch that boy," she said softly, "and I will show you exactly what a witch can do." The scarred man laughed, but there was uncertainty in it. "Pretty words? Let's see how pretty they are when—" A gunshot cracked the morning air. One of the riders screamed and grabbed his shoulder. His horse reared, nearly throwing him. Everyone spun toward the source of the shot. Tommy stood at the corner of the barn, Elijah's spare rifle in his hands, his face white but determined. "Next one goes in your chest," the boy called out. His voice shook, but his aim didn't waver. "I ain't missing twice." The scarred man stared at the 11-year-old, pointing a rifle at him. For a long moment nobody moved. Then slowly he raised his hands. "All right," he said. "All right. Maybe today isn't the day." "Leave," Elijah said. "Now, don't come back." "This isn't over, Mercer. The warrant's real. The law will come eventually. And when it does, all the brave boys with rifles won't save her." He turned his horse. His men followed the wounded one, clutching his shoulder and cursing. They rode away without looking back. When they were gone, Winona's knees buckled. Elijah caught her before she fell, held her upright while she gasped for breath. "Easy," he said. "It's over. They're gone." "It's not over. You heard him. The warrant, the evidence." "Manufactured evidence. Caldwell must have paid someone to say what he wanted." "It doesn't matter if it's manufactured. If there's a warrant, the marshal has to act on it. I'll be arrested, tried, probably hanged." Tommy ran over, his face still pale. "Miss Winona, I'm sorry. I know you said stay inside, but I heard what they said about the boy in the back room and I couldn't." Winona pulled him into a fierce hug. The rifle clattered to the ground between them. "You saved us," she said into his hair. "You brave, foolish, wonderful boy. You saved us." Tommy made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. Elijah stood apart watching them. His face was unreadable. "We need to leave," he said finally. "All of us. Tonight." Winona released Tommy and turned to face him. "And go where?" "I don't know. West, California, Canada. Anywhere but here." "And your land, your wife's grave." Pain flickered across his features. "If staying means watching you hang or Tommy get hurt, then the land doesn't matter. Nothing matters except keeping you both safe." "Elijah, I've lost one family. I won't lose another." The words hung in the cold air. Another. Family. Winona felt something crack inside her, something she had kept frozen for a very long time. "We're not going to run," she said. "Winona." "No, listen to me." She stepped closer to him, close enough to see the fear behind his determination. "Running doesn't solve anything. Caldwell has resources everywhere. He'd find us eventually, and then we'd have nothing. No land, no home, no hope. We'd have our lives." "What kind of lives?" "Hiding, looking over our shoulders forever." She shook her head. "I've lived that way. It's not living. It's just slower dying." "Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest we stop running and start fighting. Really fighting. Not just making lists and hoping for the best." "How?" Winona looked at Tommy, at the boy who had just shot a man to protect people he'd only known for weeks, at the courage in his young face. Then she looked at Elijah, at the doctor who had stopped healing because he couldn't save the one person who mattered most, at the rancher who was about to lose everything and still put her safety first. "Caldwell thinks he's won," she said slowly. "He thinks we're trapped, helpless, that all he has to do is wait, and everything falls into his lap. Isn't he right? Only if we let him be. But there's one thing he hasn't counted on." "What's that?" Winona smiled. It was not a gentle smile. "He hasn't counted on how dangerous people become when they have nothing left to lose." She walked past them both, heading toward the house. Her mind was already working again, planning, calculating. The battle was coming, one way or another, and Winona Blackwood intended to win. 3 days after the bounty hunters fled, Winona rode into Missoula alone. Elijah had argued against it for hours, called her reckless, called her foolish, called her things she pretended not to hear. But in the end, she had saddled the old mare and gone anyway. "If I don't come back by nightfall," she had told him, "take Tommy and head for the mountains. Don't look back. And if you do come back, then we'll have what we need to fight." She kept her head down as she entered town, wore Martha's old bonnet pulled low over her face, walked the mare slowly through streets that had tried to kill her just weeks ago. The town looked different in daylight. Smaller. Less threatening. Just another frontier settlement full of people trying to survive. She found what she was looking for on the edge of the business district. A small building with a hand-painted sign that read, Missoula Gazette, J. Whitmore, editor. She tied the mare to the hitching post and went inside. The office was cramped and cluttered. Stacks of paper everywhere, the smell of ink and ambition. A man sat at a desk in the corner, scratching away with a pen that had seen better days. He looked up when she entered. Mid-30s, spectacles, the hungry look of someone who believed in something bigger than himself. Help you. Are you Whitmore, the editor? That's me, and you are. Winona removed the bonnet, watched his face change as recognition dawned. You're her, he said. The woman from the Pemberton case. I am. You shouldn't be here. There's a warrant. I know about the warrant. I also know it's based on lies. Whitmore set down his pen, his eyes sharpened behind those spectacles. That's a serious accusation. I have serious evidence, or I will if you help me get it. Why would I help you? I don't know you. For all I know, you actually did poison the doctor. Winona pulled a piece of paper from her pocket, unfolded it, laid it on his desk. Do you know what this is? Whitmore examined it. His eyebrows rose. A land survey for Stone Creek Ranch. Look at the date. He looked. This was filed 6 months ago, before Dr. Pemberton died. Look at the name at the bottom. He looked again. His face went pale. Harrison Caldwell. Caldwell had that ranch surveyed 6 months before he started pressuring Elijah Mercer to sell. 6 months before he called in the loan. 6 months before I arrived and gave him the perfect scandal to use as leverage. Whitmore leaned back in his chair. Where did you get this? Does it matter? It matters if I'm going to print it. I found it in the county records office, filed under the wrong name, almost like someone wanted it hidden. Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. His pen tapped against the desk in a nervous rhythm. Caldwell owns this town, he finally said. He owns the bank, which means he owns most of the businesses. He owns the sheriff, which means he owns the law. If I print something that goes against him, then you're doing your job. Isn't that why you became a newspaper man? To tell the truth? I became a newspaper man to eat. Truth is a luxury I can't always afford. Winona felt her hopes sink. Another dead end. Another door closing. Then Whitmore smiled. It was small, but it was real. But today, he said, maybe I can afford a little truth. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, dipped his pen in ink. Tell me everything. Winona talked for an hour. About the trial in the saloon. About Caldwell's visit to the ranch. About the bounty hunters and the manufactured evidence. About the pattern she had seen the web Caldwell had woven to trap Elijah and anyone else who stood in his way. Whitmore wrote it all down, asked questions, made her repeat details until he was sure he had them right. When she finished, he set down his pen and rubbed his eyes. This is dangerous, he said, for both of us. I know. If Caldwell finds out I'm investigating him, he'll destroy me, buy my debts, burn my press, maybe worse. I know that too. Then why should I do it? Winona stood, looked him directly in the eyes. Because someone has to. Because if good people stay silent while men like Caldwell crush everyone beneath them, then eventually there won't be any good people left. Just the crushed and the crushers. Whitmore held her gaze for a long moment. You really believe that? I've believed it my whole life. It's the only thing that's kept me alive. He nodded slowly. Then he reached out and shook her hand. I'll look into it. Quietly. Can't promise anything, but I'll look. That's all I ask. She left the newspaper office feeling lighter than she had in weeks. It wasn't victory, not yet. But it was something. A crack in Caldwell's armor. She was halfway to her horse when she heard the voice. Well, well, The witch returns. Winona turned. Constance Pemberton stood on the boardwalk dressed in black silk and diamonds, her face twisted with hatred. You have nerve, Constance continued, coming back here after what you did. I did nothing except refuse to die when you wanted me to. You murdered my husband. Your husband died of a weak heart. You know it. I know it. The new evidence you manufactured doesn't change that. Constance's face flushed red. How dare you? How dare I speak the truth? That's all I've ever done, Mrs. Pemberton. It's all I know how to do. People were stopping to watch now, gathering on the boardwalk, whispering behind their hands. Constance saw them watching, and her expression changed. Became the mask of the grieving widow again. This woman killed my husband, she announced to the crowd. She used Indian witchcraft to poison him slowly over months. And now she's hiding at Elijah Mercer's ranch, probably working her devil magic on him too. Murmurs rippled through the gathering crowd. Someone should fetch the sheriff, a man called out. Hold her until he gets here, a woman added. Winona felt the mob mentality building. The same energy that had filled Sullivan's saloon the night they banished her. Fear and hatred, looking for a target. She took a step back. Then another. Running won't help you, Constance said. There's nowhere left to go. I'm not running. I'm leaving. There's a difference. Is there? Winona reached her horse, mounted quickly. The crowd was moving toward her now, emboldened by numbers and righteousness. You'll hang for what you did, Constance called after her. I'll make sure of it, if it's the last thing I do. Winona kicked the mare into a gallop. The crowd scattered. Shouts followed her down the street, but no one gave chase. She didn't slow down until Missoula was a smudge on the horizon behind her. The sun was setting by the time she reached Stone Creek Ranch. Elijah was waiting on the porch, rifle in hand, his face tight with worry. You're late. I ran into complications. What kind of complications? The Constance Pemberton kind. She dismounted and told him about the newspaper editor, about the land survey, about the confrontation on the street. When she finished, Elijah was quiet for a long time. You took a risk, he finally said. A big one. I know. If Constance had rallied that crowd, she didn't. But she could have. Yes, she could have. Winona met his eyes. Every choice we make from now on is a risk. Staying here is a risk. Leaving is a risk. The only question is which risks are worth taking. And you think this newspaper editor is worth the risk? I think he's our best chance, maybe our only chance. Elijah nodded slowly. He reached out and took the mare's reins from her hand. Go inside. Tommy saved you some supper. I'll take care of the horse. Elijah. He stopped. Thank you, she said, for trusting me, for letting me try. Something shifted in his expression, softened. I don't know if it's trust yet, he said quietly. But it's something close. He led the horse away. Winona watched him go, feeling that warmth in her chest again. That dangerous, hopeful warmth. Inside, Tommy was waiting at the table with a plate of food that was only slightly burned. Miss Winona, you're back. I'm back. What happened? Did you find help? Mr. Mercer wouldn't tell me anything. He just kept pacing and looking at the road. I found something. Whether it helps or not, we'll see. She sat down and ate while Tommy peppered her with questions. About the town, about the newspaper, about Constance Pemberton and the crowd that had gathered. She answered what she could, deflected what she couldn't. When Elijah came back inside, he joined them at the table. The three of them sat together in the lamplight, talking and planning, and something that felt almost like laughing. For a little while, the danger outside felt far away. Later that night, after Tommy had gone to bed, Winona found Elijah sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. She sat down beside him without speaking. The silence between them was comfortable now. Not the silence of strangers, but the silence of people who had moved past the need for constant words. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Yes. Why do you keep fighting after everything you've been through, all the times the world has tried to break you? Why don't you just give up? Winona considered the question. It deserved a real answer. When I was 15, she said, I ran away from the missionary orphanage. They caught me after 3 days. Beat me so badly I couldn't walk for a week. Elijah's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. While I was healing, one of the other girls asked me the same question. Why fight when fighting only made things worse? What did you tell her? I told her that I didn't know how to stop. That somewhere inside me, there was a fire that refused to go out no matter how much water they poured on it. Winona paused. I still don't know where that fire comes from, but I know it's the only thing that's kept me alive. Maybe it's what brought you here. Maybe. She looked at him then, really looked, at the grief he wore like a second skin, at the strength underneath that grief, at the man who was slowly, painfully learning to live again. Can I ask you something? She said. Fair's fair. The night you found me in the snow, you said you didn't know why you came after me. Have you figured it out yet? Elijah was quiet for a long time. The stars wheeled overhead. The wind whispered through the frozen grass. Martha used to say I had a hero complex, he finally said. Said I couldn't stand to see suffering without trying to fix it. It's why I became a doctor. Why I went to war. Why I ended up here in the middle of nowhere trying to save land I couldn't afford to keep. That doesn't answer my question. I know. He turned to face her. In the starlight, his eyes looked silver. The truth is, I think I saw something in you. That night in the saloon. Something that reminded me of who I used to be. Before the war. Before Martha. Before I forgot how to hope. And now I see it more clearly every day. His voice dropped. You're the bravest person I've ever met, Winona Blackwood. And I'm not just saying that because you survived a blizzard in your bare feet. She laughed. It surprised her, the sound of it. She hadn't laughed in so long she'd almost forgotten how. Brave or stupid, she said. Sometimes I can't tell the difference. Neither can I. Maybe that's the point. They sat together in comfortable silence. The night grew colder, but neither of them moved to go inside. I should tell you something, Elijah said finally. Whatever happens with Caldwell, with the warrant, with all of it. He paused. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you stayed. Winona felt that warmth again, stronger now, harder to ignore. I'm glad I stayed too. Even with bounty hunters and corrupt bankers and half the territory wanting you dead. Even with all that. She smiled slightly. It's still better than the orphanage. He laughed then. A real laugh, rusty from disuse, but genuine. In the darkness, without thinking, his hand found hers. She didn't pull away. They stayed like that until the cold finally drove them inside. Two people who had lost everything, learning to hold on to each other. The next morning brought new trouble, as mornings in Montana had a habit of doing. Tommy came running in from the barn, his face flushed with excitement. Someone's coming! A wagon from town! Elijah grabbed his rifle. Winona grabbed the pistol she had started keeping close. But when the wagon rolled into view, neither of them was prepared for what they saw. An old man sat at the reins, white-haired, dignified, wearing clothes that spoke of money but not ostentation. Beside him sat a woman wrapped in blankets, despite the morning warmth. Her face was thin, her breathing labored. Even from a distance, Winona could see the signs. Consumption. Who is that? Tommy asked. Elijah had gone very still. That, he said quietly, is Judge Cornelius Ashby. And unless I'm mistaken, the woman with him is Adelaide Caldwell, the banker's wife. The wagon stopped in the yard. Judge Ashby climbed down with the careful movements of age. He helped Mrs. Caldwell descend, supporting most of her weight. Mr. Mercer, the judge said, His voice was deep formal, but not unkind. "I apologize for the intrusion, but we have urgent business and it couldn't wait." "What business?" "The kind that might save your ranch." He looked at Winona. "And your life, Miss Blackwood, if you're willing to listen." Winona stepped forward. Her eyes moved to Adelaide Caldwell, who stood trembling in the cold, looking like a ghost already halfway to the other side. "Why would you help us? Your husband—" "My husband is a monster." Adelaide's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried clearly in the morning air. "And I have proof." She reached into her coat and withdrew a bundle of papers tied with string. "Letters, ledgers, records of every illegal thing Harrison has done for the past 8 years, including paying to have Dr. Pemberton's body poisoned after it was exhumed." Winona felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. "Poisoned after—" "The original autopsy showed nothing. Natural causes, just as you said. But my husband needed a murder charge to force you out of hiding, so he paid the new doctor to add arsenic to the tissue samples." Adelaide's eyes filled with tears. "I should have stopped him years ago, but I was afraid, too sick and too afraid." "What changed?" "I heard what happened with the bounty hunters, that they threatened a child." Her voice cracked. "I never wanted children because I knew what kind of father Harrison would be. But threatening a child, that was too far, even for me." Judge Ashby stepped forward. "Mrs. Caldwell came to me yesterday with this evidence. I've examined it. It's authentic. And it's more than enough to bring criminal charges against Harrison Caldwell." "Why come to us?" Elijah asked. "Why not just go to the territorial marshal?" "Because the marshal is in Harrison's pocket. Has been for years." The judge's face hardened. "But I know federal prosecutors in Helena who would very much like to bring down a corrupt territorial banker. I've already sent a telegram. They'll be here within the week." Winona stared at the bundle of papers in Adelaide's shaking hands. Months of fear and running and fighting, and here was the weapon that could end it all. "Why?" she asked Adelaide. "You'll lose everything. Your home, your position, probably your husband." Adelaide met her eyes. In them, Winona saw something she recognized. The fire that refuses to go out. "I'm dying, Miss Blackwood. Weeks left, maybe days. The consumption has won." She took a rattling breath. "But before I go, I want to do one good thing. One thing that matters. I want my life to mean something besides being Harrison Caldwell's wife." She held out the papers. Winona took them. The weight of them felt like salvation. "Thank you," she said. "You don't know what this means." "I think I do." Adelaide smiled weakly. "I think it means that sometimes, even at the end, we get to choose who we are." She swayed suddenly. Judge Ashby caught her before she fell. "She needs rest," he said. "Is there somewhere she can lie down?" Winona looked at Elijah. He nodded. "Inside. Take my room." They helped Adelaide into the house, settled her in Elijah's bed with blankets piled around her thin frame. Her breathing had become more labored, each inhale a struggle. "I'll stay with her," Winona said. "I have some experience with consumption. Not much, but some." "You don't have to." "I want to." She looked at Adelaide's pale face. "She gave us everything. The least I can do is make sure she's comfortable." Elijah nodded. He and Judge Ashby went outside to talk. Tommy hovered in the doorway, uncertain. "Go with them," Winona told him. "I'll call if I need help." The boy went. Winona sat beside Adelaide's bed. The older woman's eyes were closed, but she wasn't sleeping. "You didn't have to do this," Winona said softly. "Yes, I did." Adelaide's eyes opened. "Do you know what it's like to live with a monster, to watch him destroy people, and do nothing because you're too scared?" "No, I don't." "It eats you from the inside. Worse than the consumption. Worse than anything." A tear slid down her cheek. "I've been dying for years, Miss Blackwood. The disease just made it official." Winona took her hand. It was cold. So cold. You're not dying now. You're living. For the first time, maybe. Adelaide squeezed her fingers weakly. Will you stay until the end? Yes. Promise? I promise. Adelaide closed her eyes. Her breathing slowly steadied into something like sleep. Winona stayed beside her, holding her hand, watching the light change through the window. Thinking about courage, about redemption, about the choices we make when we have nothing left to lose. Adelaide Caldwell had been a coward for 8 years, and in one moment she had become the bravest person Winona had ever met. Maybe that was the point. Maybe courage wasn't about never being afraid. Maybe it was about finding one moment when fear didn't matter anymore. Outside, she could hear Elijah and the judge talking, planning, preparing for what came next. The battle was almost won, but Winona knew better than to celebrate too soon. Harrison Caldwell was still out there, still dangerous, still capable of anything. And when cornered animals had nothing left to lose, they became more dangerous than ever. The real fight was still coming. Adelaide Caldwell died 3 days later. She went quietly in her sleep with Winona holding her hand and the first light of dawn creeping through the window. One moment she was breathing. The next, she wasn't. Winona sat with her for a long time after, not crying, not praying, just sitting. She had known this woman for less than a week, had spent most of that time tending to her failing body, listening to her ragged confessions, watching the guilt pour out of her like water from a cracked vessel. And yet somehow Adelaide's death felt like losing family. Elijah found her there an hour later. She's gone, Winona said without looking up. I know. He stood in the doorway, uncertain. Are you all right? No, but I will be. He came closer, put his hand on her shoulder, didn't say anything else. Sometimes silence was the only comfort that mattered. They buried Adelaide on the hill behind the house next to Martha's grave. It seemed right somehow. Two women who had never met, united by the men who had failed them and the land that would hold them forever. Judge Ashby read from the Bible. Tommy stood with his hat in his hands, looking older than his 11 years. Winona stood apart, watching the frozen earth swallow another person she had cared about. When it was over, the judge approached her. The federal prosecutors arrive tomorrow, he said. With Mrs. Caldwell's evidence, they'll have enough to arrest Harrison and half his associates. Good. You should know there may be complications. What kind? Caldwell has friends in high places. Some of them might try to make this go away, destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses. He paused. You and Mr. Mercer are the primary witnesses to many of his crimes. That makes you targets. We've been targets since the day I arrived. This doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Before he wanted your land and your silence. Now he wants you dead. Winona looked at the fresh grave, at the mound of earth that had been Adelaide Caldwell's final act of courage. Then he'll have to come and get us. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire watching the flames dance, turning Adelaide's papers over and over in her hands. The evidence that would destroy Harrison Caldwell, the weapon his own wife had forged against him. Elijah found her there sometime after midnight. You should rest. So should you. He sat down across from her. The firelight carved shadows into his face. I've been thinking, he said. Dangerous habit. About what happens after, when Caldwell is arrested and all this is over. What about it? About what you'll do, where you'll go. Winona felt something tighten in her chest. She had been avoiding this question, pushing it away every time it tried to surface. I don't know, she admitted. You could stay. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to examine. Stay as what? She asked carefully. As whatever you want to be. Partner, neighbor, friend. He paused. Family. Elijah? I'm not asking for anything, not promising anything. He ran a hand through his hair. I just don't want you to leave. Not because you think you have to. Not because you think there's nothing here for you. What is here for me? A home. If you want it. People who care about you. A place where you belong. Winona felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. I've never belonged anywhere. Maybe you do now. She looked at him. At this broken, stubborn, kind man who had pulled her out of a snowdrift and given her a reason to keep fighting. Maybe I do, she said softly. Neither of them spoke for a long time after that. They just sat together, watching the fire burn down to embers, letting the silence say what words couldn't. The federal prosecutors arrived the next morning just as Judge Ashby had promised. 3 men in dark suits and serious expressions carrying briefcases full of legal documents and the authority of the United States government. They set up in the main room of the ranch house, spreading papers across the table, taking statements from everyone. Winona told her story again. Then again. Then a third time, while one of them wrote down every word. By afternoon, they had what they needed. We'll arrest Caldwell tonight, the lead prosecutor said. His name was Morrison, and he had the sharp eyes of a man who had seen every kind of corruption the frontier could produce. Along with Sheriff Doyle and several others named in Mrs. Caldwell's documents. What about the warrant against Miss Blackwood? Elijah asked. Void. Based on manufactured evidence. The doctor who falsified the autopsy results has already been taken into custody. He's cooperating. Morrison looked at Winona. You're a free woman, Miss Blackwood. The charges are dropped. Free. The word felt strange, foreign, like something from a language she had never learned to speak. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me. Thank Adelaide Caldwell. Without her evidence, we'd still be chasing shadows. They left an hour later, riding back toward Missoula, with the judge accompanying them. The arrests would happen at sunset. By morning, Harrison Caldwell would be in chains. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Winona felt a cold knot of dread settling in her stomach. Something's wrong, she said to Elijah. What do you mean? I don't know, it's just too easy. Caldwell has been one step ahead of us this whole time, and now suddenly we're winning. We have his wife's testimony, his own records. What could he possibly do? I don't know, but he's not the kind of man who goes down without a fight. Elijah considered this. Then he went to the wall and took down his rifle. Then we stay ready. Whatever happens, we face it together. Tommy appeared in the doorway. What's going on? Why do you have the gun? Just being careful, Elijah said. I want you to stay inside tonight, near the back room. If anything happens, you get out through the window and run for the hills. But no arguments. Promise me. Tommy looked between Elijah and Winona, saw the fear they were trying to hide. I promise, he said quietly. The sun set. Darkness crept across the land. In Missoula, the federal prosecutors would be moving on Caldwell's house, surrounding it with armed men ready to take him into custody. At Stone Creek Ranch, 3 people waited. The first gunshot came an hour after dark. Winona was on her feet before the echo faded. Elijah was already at the window, rifle raised. How many, she asked. Can't tell. At least 4, maybe more. Caldwell's men. Has to be. He must have known we were coming. Another shot cracked through the night. Wood splintered somewhere above their heads. They're shooting high, trying to scare us out. That's not going to work. No, but they'll try something else soon. Tommy ran in from the back room. What do I do? What I told you. Window, hills, now. I'm not leaving you. Tommy. No. The boy's voice cracked with fear and defiance. You're my family. I'm not running while you die. Winona grabbed his shoulders, made him look at her. Listen to me. If we all die here, Caldwell wins. Everything Adelaide sacrificed, everything we've fought for it all means nothing. But if you survive, you can tell people what happened. You can make sure the truth gets out. But you're not running away. You're carrying our story forward. That's the most important job of all." Tears streamed down Tommy's face, but he nodded. "Go," Winona said. "Don't stop until you reach the Hendersons' farm. Tell them everything." He hugged her fiercely. Then Elijah. Then he was gone, slipping through the back window into the night. Another shot. Closer this time. "They're moving in," Elijah said. "How much ammunition do we have?" "Enough for a fight. Not enough for a siege." "Then we make every shot count." She grabbed the pistol she had been carrying for weeks. Checked the chambers. 6 rounds. 6 chances. "Winona?" Elijah's voice was strange. Tight. "If we don't make it through this, don't. I need to say it. Then say it after. When we're alive and this is over." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "After," he agreed. The front door exploded inward. 3 men rushed through, guns blazing. Elijah dropped the first one with a shot to the chest. Winona fired at the second, catching him in the shoulder. He spun and fell. The third got a shot off. Elijah grunted and stumbled. "Elijah?" "I'm fine, just a graze. Keep shooting." More men were coming. Too many. They poured through the door and the windows, filling the small cabin with smoke and noise and death. Winona fired until her pistol was empty. Then she grabbed a knife and kept fighting. She didn't know how long it lasted. Minutes that felt like hours. The world narrowed to a series of moments. Block, strike, dodge, survive. Then a blow caught her from behind. The world tilted. She fell. When she looked up, Harrison Caldwell was standing over her. He looked nothing like the polished banker she had seen at the ranch. His clothes were torn. His face was bloody. His eyes held the wild light of a man who had lost everything and no longer cared about consequences. "You," he snarled. "You ruined everything. Your wife ruined everything. I just helped." He kicked her. Pain exploded through her ribs. Adelaide was weak, always weak. I should have known she'd betray me. She wasn't weak. She was braver than you'll ever be. Another kick. Winona gasped, curling around the agony. "Where are the papers? The evidence she gave you?" "Gone. The prosecutors have it. You're finished, Caldwell. Even if you kill us, you're finished." Something changed in his face. The rage cooled. Became something worse. "Then I have nothing left to lose." He raised his pistol, aimed at her head. This is it, she thought. This is how it ends. She closed her eyes, waited for the shot. It didn't come. Instead, she heard a crash, a grunt of pain, a body hitting the floor. She opened her eyes. Elijah stood over Caldwell's crumpled form, the rifle reversed in his hands, the stock bloody from the blow he had just delivered. His shirt was soaked red. His face was gray with pain. But he was alive. "Never," he gasped, "threaten my family." He swayed, fell to his knees. "Elijah?" Winona crawled to him, pressed her hands against the wound in his side. "Stay with me. Stay with me." "I'm trying." His voice was fading. "Did we win?" She looked around the cabin. Bodies everywhere. Caldwell unconscious on the floor. The smell of gunpowder and blood. "We won." "Good." He smiled weakly. "That's good." His eyes closed. "No. No, no, no." Winona pressed harder on the wound. Blood pulsed between her fingers. "You don't get to die. Not after everything. Not now." She heard hoofbeats outside. Voices shouting. The cavalry arriving too late. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the man bleeding out beneath her hands. "Help!" she screamed. "Someone help!" The door banged open. Federal marshals poured in. Someone pulled her away from Elijah. Someone else knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. "He's alive," a voice said. "Barely. We need to get him to a doctor." "I'm a doctor," Winona heard herself say. "I can help. Let me help." They let her through. She knelt beside Elijah, her hands finding the wound again, her mind clicking into the calm focus she had learned from Dr. Pemberton. "I need clean cloth, hot water, thread and needle, now." Someone ran to get supplies. Winona worked her hands steady, even though her heart was breaking. "Don't you dare die," she whispered. "Don't you dare leave me." Elijah didn't respond, but his heart kept beating. His chest kept rising. He was still fighting. And as long as he was fighting, she would fight too. The surgery took 3 hours. Winona worked by lamplight, removing the bullet, cleaning the wound, stitching torn flesh back together. Her hands never trembled. Her focus never wavered. When it was done, she sat back and finally allowed herself to breathe. "Will he live?" Tommy asked. The boy had come back when he heard the shooting stop, had refused to leave Elijah's side since. "I think so. The bullet missed the vital organs. If infection doesn't set in, he should recover. And if infection does set in, then we fight that too." Morning came slowly. Gray light crept through the shattered windows of the cabin. Outside, federal marshals were cleaning up the aftermath, bodies being loaded onto wagons. Caldwell in chains finally facing the justice he had avoided for so long. Judge Ashby appeared in the doorway. "How is he?" "Stable, for now." "Thank God." The old judge looked exhausted. "Caldwell talked after we caught him, confessed to everything, the manufactured evidence, the bounty hunters, tonight's attack. He's finished." "Good. The charges against you are not only dropped, they're being expunged. The territorial governor himself has issued an apology. You're a hero, Miss Blackwood." "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to die." "Sometimes that's the same thing." He left her alone with Elijah and Tommy. The boy had fallen asleep in the chair, exhausted by fear and relief. Elijah lay motionless on the bed, his breathing shallow but steady. Winona took his hand. "You saved my life," she said softly. "Again. That's twice now." No response. "I need you to wake up. I need you to be all right. Because I think I—" She stopped, swallowed. "I think I love you, Elijah Mercer, and I can't lose you before I get to say it properly." His fingers twitched in hers. She looked up. His eyes were open, barely, clouded with pain, but aware. "You love me." His voice was a rasp. "Yes." "Took you long enough to say it." A laugh escaped her, half sob, half joy. "I was waiting for the right moment. After I almost died seemed right. It seemed honest." He tried to smile, winced instead. "I love you too, in case that wasn't obvious." She leaned down, pressed her forehead against his. "Rest now. We can talk about it when you're stronger. Promise you'll be here when I wake up." "I promise." His eyes closed again. His breathing deepened, sleep claiming him at last. Winona stayed beside him, holding his hand, watching the light change through the broken windows. Thinking about everything that had happened, everything that was still to come. Caldwell was gone. The charges were dropped. The ranch was safe. But more than that, she had found something she never expected. A family. A home. A place where she belonged. She had walked into a blizzard expecting to die. And instead, she had found reasons to live. Outside, the sun rose higher. The snow began to melt. And somewhere beneath the frozen ground, the first shoots of spring were beginning to stir. Elijah's recovery took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of changing bandages. 6 weeks of forcing bitter medicine down his throat. 6 weeks of arguing with a stubborn man who wanted to get out of bed before his body was ready. "I can walk," he insisted on the 3rd day. "You can barely sit up." "That's walking adjacent." "That's nonsense." He tried to stand anyway, made it 2 steps before his knees buckled. Winona caught him struggling under his weight, guiding him back to the bed. "Stubborn fool," she muttered. "That's Dr. Stubborn Fool to you. You're not a doctor anymore. Neither are you. And yet here we are. She couldn't argue with that. Tommy made himself useful in ways neither of them expected. He took over the morning chores without being asked, fed the animals, hauled water, kept the fire burning through the cold February nights, and he talked, constantly, about everything and nothing, about the chickens and the weather and the book he was reading, about the letter he had received from the territorial school offering him a scholarship. "They say I could start in the fall," he said one evening sitting by Elijah's bed. "Learn proper doctoring, become a real physician." "Is that what you want?" Elijah asked. "I don't know. Maybe." Tommy picked at a loose thread on his sleeve. "You said you'd teach me. Back before all this happened. Do you still want to?" "I said I'd teach you and I meant it. But Tommy, I can teach you the basics. A real school can teach you everything else." "I don't want to leave." "Why not?" The boy was quiet for a long moment. "Because last time I left somewhere, everyone I loved died. And I'm scared if I leave again." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Winona put her hand on his shoulder. "We're not going anywhere," she said. "This is your home. No matter where you go or what you do, you can always come back here. Promise?" "Promise." Tommy nodded slowly. Then he smiled that bright, fierce smile that reminded Winona of his courage on the night he had shot a bounty hunter to protect them. "Okay," he said. "I'll go, but I'm coming back every summer, and every Christmas, and you have to write me letters." "Every week," Winona promised. "Every week." Elijah agreed. Winter slowly released its grip on the valley. The snow melted first along the south-facing slopes, revealing brown grass that had somehow survived the freeze. Then the creek began to thaw water gurgling beneath the ice, pushing through in small trickles that grew stronger each day. Winona found herself spending more time outside as the weather warmed. Walking the property, learning its contours, imagining what it might look like in full bloom. One afternoon she climbed the hill to where Martha and Adelaide were buried, stood between the two graves looking down at the ranch below. "I hope you don't mind," she said to Martha's headstone. "I didn't plan this. Any of it. I ended up here. And now I don't want to leave." The wind whispered through the grass, almost like an answer. "He still loves you. I can see it in the way he looks at your photograph, the way he touches your things." Winona paused. "I'm not trying to replace you. I don't think I could even if I wanted to. You were his first love, his wife, the mother of the child he never got to meet." She knelt and brushed dead leaves from the headstone. "But I love him too, and I think maybe there's room for both of us in his heart. If that's okay with you." Silence, but not an unfriendly silence. Winona stayed there until the sun began to set. Then she walked back down to the house, feeling lighter than she had in years. Elijah was sitting up when she came in. Actually, sitting up, not propped against pillows, but using his own strength to hold himself upright. "Look at you," she said. "I've been practicing while you were gone. Behind my back. It's the only way to get anything done around here." She sat down on the edge of the bed, close enough to touch but not quite touching. "I went to visit the graves," she said. "I saw you through the window. Are you all right with that? Me going up there?" "Why wouldn't I be?" "Because Martha was your wife, and I'm—" "Your what?" She struggled for the right word. Companion, friend, lover. None of them felt adequate. "I don't know what I am," she admitted. Elijah reached out, took her hand. "You're the woman I love," he said simply. "And if Martha were here, she'd love you too. She always said I needed someone to keep me from being too serious. I think she'd approve of you." "You think so?" "I know so." He pulled her closer. She went willingly, careful of his healing wound, but needing to be near him. "When I'm better," he said, "I want to ask you something." "You can ask me now." "No. It needs to be done properly, on my feet, with a ring." Winona's heart stopped. Elijah? Don't answer yet. Don't say anything. Just know that it's coming. And when it does, I hope you'll say yes. She kissed him instead of answering, poured everything she felt into it. All the fear and hope and love that had been building since the night he pulled her from the snow. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. I'll take that as a good sign, Elijah said. Shut up and rest. Yes, ma'am. Spring arrived in full force by April. The creek ran high with snowmelt. The grass turned green. Wildflowers appeared in patches across the hills, purple and yellow and white. Elijah was walking now, slowly at first with a cane, then without. Each day he grew stronger. Each day the wound healed a little more. And each day he and Winona grew closer. They worked together, ate together, talked late into the night about everything from medicine to philosophy to the future they were building. They disagreed about small things and agreed about the things that mattered. It felt, Winona realized, like being married, even without the ceremony. Judge Ashby came to visit in late April. He brought news from Missoula. Caldwell's trial is set for June, he said. The federal prosecutor is confident. Between Adelaide's evidence and his own confessions, he'll be going to prison for a very long time. Good, Elijah said. What about Constance Pemberton? Fled to California, took whatever money she could carry and disappeared. The authorities are looking for her, but... He shrugged. California is a big place. She'll surface eventually, Winona said. People like her always do. Perhaps, but she's no longer your problem. The judge smiled. You've done more than enough. Both of you. After he left, Winona stood on the porch watching the sunset. Elijah joined her, standing close, his shoulder touching hers. It's over, he said. Is it? It doesn't feel over. That's because you're not used to peace. Neither am I. He slipped his arm around her waist. But we'll learn. Together. She leaned into him. Let herself believe just for a moment that everything really was going to be all right. The proposal came on a Sunday in May. Elijah had been secretive all morning, disappeared after breakfast, and didn't come back until nearly noon. When he finally appeared, he was wearing his best clothes and carrying a small velvet box. Walk with me, he said. They climbed the hill together, past the creek, past the graves, all the way to the top where you could see the entire valley spread out below. Elijah turned to face her. I had a speech prepared, he said. A whole long thing about love and second chances, and the unexpected gifts that come when we least expect them. What happened to it? I forgot every word the moment I saw you this morning. He laughed softly. You do that to me. Make me forget everything except how much I want to be near you. He opened the velvet box. Inside was a ring. Simple gold band, but beautiful in its simplicity. This was my grandmother's, he said. She gave it to my grandfather in 1820. They were married for 53 years. Winona felt tears prick her eyes. Winona Blackwood. Elijah knelt slowly, carefully, mindful of his still healing wound. I know we haven't known each other long. I know we've both been broken by life. I know there are 100 reasons why this is too fast, too soon, too risky. But I don't care about any of that. All I know is that when I think about my future, you're in it. When I imagine growing old, you're beside me. When I dream about what this ranch could become, you're the one building it with me. He took her hand. Will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Then he stood and kissed her, and the valley seemed to hold its breath around them. When they walked back down to the house, Tommy was waiting on the porch. Well, he demanded, did she say yes? She said yes, Elijah confirmed. Tommy whooped and threw his hat in the air. I knew it. I knew she would. This is the best day ever. He ran to hug them both, all gangly arms and overwhelming joy, and Winona standing there with Elijah's arm around her waist and Tommy's arms around them, both finally understood what it meant to have a family. Not the family you were born into, but the family you chose. The family you built from broken pieces and stubborn hope. The family you earned. The wedding took place in June, on the first day of summer. They held it by the creek where the water ran clear and cold, and the wildflowers bloomed in riots of color. Judge Ashby performed the ceremony. Tommy stood as best man, proud and nervous in his new suit. The neighbors came. The Hendersons from the farm down the road. Old Mrs. Patterson, who had known Elijah's parents. Even Whitmore, the newspaper editor who had run a story about the whole affair and was already planning a follow-up about the wedding. Winona wore a dress that Mrs. Henderson had helped her make. Simple white cotton, nothing fancy, but beautiful in its simplicity. Elijah wore his father's old suit, carefully preserved all these years. Dearly beloved, Judge Ashby began, "We are gathered here to witness the union of two souls who found each other in the darkest of times." Winona barely heard the rest. She was too busy looking at Elijah, at the love in his eyes, at the smile that transformed his weathered face into something almost young. This was real. This was happening. After everything she had survived, everything she had lost, she was standing here promising her life to a man who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. "Do you, Elijah Mercer, take this woman to be your wife?" "I do." "Do you, Winona Blackwood, take this man to be your husband?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife." Judge Ashby smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Elijah kissed her. The neighbors cheered. Tommy threw his hat in the air again, and Winona Mercer née Blackwood felt the last piece of her broken heart click into place. The celebration lasted until sunset. Food and music and dancing under the open sky. Laughter echoing across the valley for the first time in years. When the guests finally left and Tommy had gone to bed, Winona and Elijah sat on the porch together, watching the stars emerge one by one. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I knew was possible." "Good." He took her hand. "Because this is just the beginning." "The beginning of what?" "Everything. Our life, our family, our future." He smiled. "I have plans, Mrs. Mercer." "What kind of plans?" "The kind that involve building this ranch into something our grandchildren will be proud of. The kind that involved teaching Tommy everything I know, and watching him become the doctor I never had the courage to keep being. The kind that involved growing old beside the most remarkable woman I've ever met." Winona felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, the best kind. "Those sound like good plans." "I thought so." They sat together until the moon rose, until the last light faded from the sky, until the valley fell silent around them. Then they went inside to the home they had built from the wreckage of their separate lives. 3 years passed. The ranch prospered in ways Elijah had only dreamed of. With Winona's knowledge of healing and his knowledge of medicine, they built a reputation that spread across the territory. People came from miles around seeking treatment, some with money, some with nothing but hope. They turned no one away. Tommy left for medical school in the fall of that first year. He came back every summer just as he had promised, taller, each time, more confident but still the same fierce, loyal boy who had shot a man to protect his family. He graduated top of his class, returned to Stone Creek with a certificate and a determination to practice medicine the way Elijah and Winona had taught him, serving anyone who needed help regardless of ability to pay. Winona gave birth to their daughter in the spring of the second year. They named her Adelaide after the woman whose courage had saved them all. Adelaide had her mother's dark hair and her father's gray eyes. She laughed constantly, a gurgling, joyful sound that filled the house with warmth. By the third year, the ranch had grown to include a small clinic, a schoolhouse for the neighboring children, and a garden that Winona had planted with medicinal herbs from both traditions, Western and Salish. On a warm evening in September, Winona sat on the porch watching Adelaide toddle across the yard. Tommy was teaching her to walk, holding her hands, guiding her steps with infinite patience. Elijah came out and sat beside her. His hair was grayer now, his face more lined, but his eyes still held that spark she had seen the first night in Sullivan's saloon. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how strange life is, how one decision can change everything." "Which decision?" "Yours. Coming after me that night, pulling me out of the snow." "Best decision I ever made." "I know, but you didn't know that then. You risked everything for a stranger. Why?" Elijah was quiet for a moment, watching Tommy and Adelaide, watching the sun set over the valley they had built together. "Because some things are more important than safety," he finally said. "Some things are worth risking everything for." "Like what?" "Like love, like family, like the chance to do something good in a world that's often cruel." Adelaide shrieked with laughter as she took her first independent steps. Tommy caught her when she stumbled, swinging her up into his arms, both of them grinning. "I used to think I was broken," Winona said softly. "Too damaged to deserve happiness. Too scarred to ever heal. And now I know that the scars don't disappear. They just become part of who we are, part of our story." She leaned against him. "And our story turned out pretty well." "It did." He kissed the top of her head. "Better than I ever imagined." They sat together as the light faded, as the stars emerged, as the sounds of the ranch settled into the comfortable quiet of evening. This was home. This was family. This was everything Winona had spent her whole life searching for without knowing what she was looking for. Not perfection, not the absence of pain, just love, just belonging. Just the simple, profound gift of people who chose each other and kept choosing each other day after day, year after year. Tommy carried Adelaide inside her sleepy head, resting on his shoulder. The door closed behind them, leaving Winona and Elijah alone with the night. "No regrets?" he asked. "None. Not even the parts that hurt. Especially not those." She turned to face him. "The hurt is what brought me here. If I hadn't suffered, I never would have found you." "That's a strange kind of gratitude." "It's the only kind that matters." He pulled her close. She went willingly, as she always did, as she always would. "I love you, Winona Mercer." "I love you too, Elijah Mercer." And there on the porch of the home they had built together, surrounded by the family they had created, they held each other as the world grew quiet around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new chapters in a story that was still being written. But tonight, there was only this moment, this peace, this love that had survived everything the world could throw at it and emerged stronger for the breaking. Winona closed her eyes and listened to her husband's heartbeat. Steady, strong, alive. She had walked into a blizzard expecting to die. She had found something worth living for instead, and that she knew now was the truest kind of miracle. Not magic, not fate, just two broken people who had chosen to be brave. Just hope refusing to give up. Just love finding a way home.